Good afternoon, everyone, members of the media. I am pleased to announce today, Monday, 24th of August, that the Regulatory Authority of Bermuda has approved 3 new telecommunications licenses for 3 companies to operate selected communication services in Bermuda. The companies and licenses are Cable and Wireless Network Services, Subco Submarine Communications Operating License, Paradise Mobile Limited, ICOL Integrated Communications Operating License, and Wave Bermuda Limited, ICOL Integrated Communications Operation License, who also trades as Horizon Communications Limited. This is a welcome opportunity and news for our economy as we continue to navigate the financial effects of the global pandemic crisis and provide additional choice to all of our consumers. It also extends our extensive telecommunication systems, which Bermuda is known as a world leader, and further edifies our role as a global financial center. Let me just explain to you what these licenses involve. A subco allows for connection of submarine cables to the network of any ICOL to deliver international connectivity services. There are currently 4 international submarine cable links in Bermuda to the mainland of North America, and also coming out of South America as well. An ICOL also allows for the establishment, construction, and operation of 1 or more electronic communications networks, as well as the ability to provide services on an integrated basis in Bermuda. Currently, Bermuda has 19 separate ICOLs for mobile broadband, fixed voice, subscription television, business connectivity, and off-island connectivity, although there have been some consolidations of late in the electronic communication sector over a very recent period, over the last few years, I might add. To put this new exciting development into perspective for you all, the existing market consists of 19 ICOLs with 151,909 mobile subscribers, representing 269.4 million dollars, in revenue as an industry. The additional 2 ICOLs will add an excess of $20+ million of investment, and certainly contribute to more economic activity and jobs. The PLP government, from when it was elected in 2017, stated in its platform that for the economy, I quote, "In order for Bermuda to succeed, we need to return the economy to a path of balanced growth that creates jobs." Although the last 4 months, everyone, and we all know this, has disrupted this path, the government will remain focused on the economic challenges that Bermuda faces. It is obviously satisfying that these new telecoms operators have remained committed to following through with their investment in Bermuda and expanding the Bermuda telecommunications market. In February of 2019, I, as Minister responsible for regulatory affairs, approved the RA inviting interested operators and qualified parties to apply for licenses. Licenses had not been issued by and large since most of the existing licensors were created back when the authority was established in the year 2012. The government made it clear to the regulator that in order for the government and Bermuda to meet the desired objectives of economic growth, job creation, and economic diversification, steps needed to be made to open the telecommunications sector. Additionally, there were clearly a number of interested parties wanting to invest in Bermuda, and it was important to give them an opportunity to enter the Bermuda market, and this will be clearly in the public interest. We believe that if Bermuda is going to maintain its position as a leading global financial center, we will need to maintain a first-class infrastructure, especially in the rapidly growing area of global telecommunications. We would also need to open up to additional entrants to bring innovation, jobs, and additional competition. Bermuda must also maintain an environment of innovation and diversification as technology further and further governs the success of business, the market, and our communities. It will also be a positive news, I believe, to everyone that one of the new license holders is a company principally operated by a Bermudian, and they will benefit from the Bermuda Infrastructure Fund to assist with the development of their company. This is in keeping with our promise to create an environment where, as stated in our 2017 platform, Bermudian business can thrive, opportunities for Bermudians can be created, and capable, qualified Bermudians can earn opportunities to work, train, and succeed at every level. The government is pleased to see this support from the Bermuda Infrastructure Fund, and that Bermudians are benefiting from their aspirations, and particularly this Bermudian, to enter a very important global market. It is our hope that further developments like this will continue. Now, before I close, I'm very much aware there's been much talked about in the community about 5G. Today, the RA has announced that there will be an opportunity for the public to have their say around any decisions that are made in regarding to the potential future of 5G deployment and infrastructure in Bermuda. There has clearly been a lot of public concern raised about its deployment and what is known about 5G worldwide. Let me make it clear. There is no permission for any 5G deployment of infrastructure or equipment or technology for the purposes of operating in Bermuda. There is no permission that's been given, and it does not exist with any of the licensees who currently hold licenses at all. With government support, the regulatory authority will mandate a temporary moratorium on the deployment of 5G for all ICALL and call holders, pending the completion of a radio frequency study and the issuance of a final determination, which is a form of decision from the RA. So you understand that's what that is. It's a form of decision that it makes. It's not called decision, it's referred to as a determination. The radio frequency study will include an opportunity for the public to provide their input to the RA prior to any final decisions or a final determination being issued. I encourage every resident who is of concern of this issue and persons in all sectors to contribute in that discussion once it emerges, as the RA moves towards coming up with a sensible and clearly thought out determination around this matter. And with those comments, thank you.
Any questions?
Yes.
Yeah. To the right.
Good day, Minister. Good day, Minister. I note your emphasis that no permission has been given at this time for 5G deployment. But I recall interviewing you outside the House of Assembly at least a year ago. And in that interview, you appeared to be very robust in suggesting that it would be unlikely that government would give permission for 5G given the, as you put it, the significant infrastructure requirements that the upgrades that would have to be made, such as new antenna, base stations and antennas every couple of feet, as 5G requires. I'm wondering if you still stand by those sentiments.
Yes, but I believe you've paraphrased, and perhaps time has eroded your remembrance of what I said, in that I said that it will be a costly exercise, certainly, and that any 5G deployment would have to be carefully considered because of the considered amount of infrastructure and change that would have to be made, and it would mean a substantial change in every aspect of how telecommunications operate in Bermuda. For instance, all of the devices that we have now would have to be replaced, because it would mean essentially eliminating all the other legacy technology if you're talking about a purely 5G deployment. And if that's what you're referring to, it would require an extremely high deployment of new infrastructure and substantial investment. And until such time, I think that is carefully considered, there will be no deployment, because we need to ensure that the public understands everything of what is required, the substantial changes it will mean, and the imposing costs, because there will be a cost. So I believe I've kept to my convictions that I certainly articulated to you that time, and that until a lot of work is done, there is no 5G in Bermuda.
Particularly the health concerns raised whenever 5G is mentioned. How much of those concerns resonate with you?
Those are obviously the concerns that we have to make sure that we address. I'm not going to ignore the cries of the public who have concerns about these changes. I think at all steps, when such substantive changes are being made, we need to listen to the public and make sure the proper review and consideration of their views is done along with any of the science that actually should also be strongly considered as well. So that does factor into my stance. I want the public to feel safe with any changes that may come with any future technology that is deployed in Bermuda.
Thank you, Minister.
Good afternoon, Minister. I'll just carry on with the 5G conversation for a moment.
Sure.
We've seen elsewhere in America and in Britain and other countries where governments have taken a position on 5G components from the Chinese company Huawei. Is that a conversation that the government here has had?
No, we're very far from such a conversation. Firstly, there is no permission for 5G to be deployed. In all the cases where you mentioned, 5G has been given authorization to be deployed, and that is what has created the need for those sort of conversations to be had. But since there is no permission for deployment at this point, that conversation hasn't been had.
Okay. Can I ask you for your view on how Bermuda's telecom providers have managed to perform during the pandemic and in this period, given that so many people now are working remotely? There's so much more demand in different kind of areas. Is it your belief that they've done a good job, are doing a good job, or would you like to see improvements?
Well, let me first state that at the beginning of the pandemic, none of us understood what the impacts would be or how this would impact certain things. Certainly the impact on the workforce has been something that no one could have estimated, that a lion's share of the workforce, those that are still working, might find themselves working remotely. And many companies have had to reorganize themselves internally to respond to that requirement to still be productive, but actually have a more remote technological capability. I actually believe that our local telecom sector has responded well to that transition. And I had discussions with all of the major leaders of those companies through the pandemic about what they were doing to assist with that transition, but also how they were going to respond to the needs of the citizens. They actually suspended certain payment requirements in reference to people weren't going to have their services cut off because they couldn't pay. And certainly we also did some work with the RA to make sure that that could not happen. But there was a willingness of the telecoms operators to work with the situation. And I do believe that they responded well to that. I do believe going forward, they're obviously, because they are obviously companies that have to meet certain revenue objectives, and the economy has impacted them too. So we will be responsive to their needs as they go forward, because this has impacted them. They're not immune to the changes. But at the same time, we will work with them to make sure that people can still receive service, because people are still needing of service. The type of service people will need is changing. There'll be a lot more need for people to have greater broadband services from their homes and other places other than just centered in where they work, whether it's Hamilton or an office. So those are some of the things that we're working with the RA and with the telecom sector to deal with, even the issue of children and schools and how we adjust to children having more remote learning needs. We're talking to the telecommunications firms and the RA about how we shape the landscape to respond to that as well. So going back to your first question, I believe they did a good job in being responsive to the needs of the community, as unexpected as they evolved, and I continue to work with them to make sure that that will continue.
Mm-hmm. And just to carry on there, is there more that the government can do to improve service and lower costs, now that we're into this new normal? And as you say, a lot of children will be doing some of their education from home, and they may not be from families who can afford too much in this line. So would that be something the government is looking at now?
I agree with all your points you made, that there needs to be more done to assist families with affordability around these services, as they are going to need them, their children are going to need them, and they are going to perhaps envelop and dominate more of our daily lives. So we are working with the regulatory authority and with the telecoms companies to see what other options can be created as new services are needed. I think the private sector is quite willing to respond to new service needs. So we will work with them so that they can be affordable, they can be accessible, and potentially there may be some minimal service levels that we'll have to put in place to ensure that, just as you get with other services, whether it be for like electricity or for other services that you gain from like companies, we will work with them to ensure that people can have at least a minimal service level that is affordable.
Okay. You may have seen the story today about the issue of remuneration for the commissioners at the RA.
I've heard the story. I haven't seen it all for myself.
Okay. There was a mention in the minutes of some approval which was given by yourself, obviously from information that you had before you gave that approval. I just wondered if you had anything to say on the fact that this has now become an issue for the commissioners in how that process was carried out.
Well, what I can say, because I'm sure that these matters are in the public domain, because the minutes of the RA are published online, and this is probably where this information has come from. I was, for quite some time, even predating COVID, in discussions with the RA about an adjustment to remuneration. I think if you examine their remuneration, it is substantially disproportionate to many other similar independent bodies in the country. And so for quite some time, there was a talk on how we rationalize these costs, because at the same time, with the pandemic coming, the revenues of the RA would also decline, and thus adjustment has to be made. So in keeping with the government's cost-cutting initiatives across the board, those discussions were had with the RA, and then subject to a process that was engaged between the leaders of the RA and my office. I came forth with a recommendation, and that is what I approved on the remuneration, so an adjustment down of remuneration for the commissioners, in response to the need for all independent bodies to look at cost-cutting measures.
Okay. The commissioners say they've sent a request to you about this. I don't know if you've received that or not.
Yes.
Is there likely to be any change?
No.
No?
I made a decision, and I think that decision is quite clear in the public eye, as it is a part of the record that you should find with the RA. I made a decision on the remuneration, and that decision stands.
Okay. And are you concerned, that something like this could be a distraction at a time when the RA has got so much important work to be done, such as the Belco decision?
Well, if it's a distraction, it's a distraction for them. And it's unfortunate perhaps they've spent so much time worrying about remuneration than dealing with some other things in the public interest. But perhaps you should raise those matters with the commission itself. I know what I'm focused on. I'm focused on getting our economy back on track, creating more jobs and growth that will benefit Bermuda, whether it be in any sector that I am required to oversee, whether it be in the energy sector, whether it be in the telecom sector. That's what I'm focused on.
Okay, thank you, Minister.
Okay, with that, the press conference has ended. Thank you, Minister.